Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on December 3rd, 2022 at approximately 4:29 p.m. PST. I've been looking at a lot of things, and the one thing that has really come to light in a hurry is that people have forgotten the importance of communication, how to actually interact with each other. And the reality of it is, when we are talking, we've got all these emojis, we've got all this technology that will enable us to talk to each other. And then, I hope I'm reading that right. Looks like we have Yldrbac that has just joined us. And it looks like you got the gold. The reality of it is, we have all this technology available, and none of it is helping with really moving forward. In case you hadn't noticed, people are forgetting the importance of how to communicate one-on-one. And especially at this time of year, it is even more important than usual. But we do have a bonus here. Fair chunk of them, actually. When we are talking about the humanoid, the blue skin people, we are talking about usually the Yldrbacs. Okay. Now, the Yldrbacs are blue skin. They're usually around the 6-foot mark, so they really are about human sized. Welcome aboard, Carl. And you pulled the silver. Yes, I've seen you a lot in the room, and I heard Dave talking about you a lot in the room, or more to the point, talking to you. I'm really glad you joined us. When we take a look at, and I'm talking about not just amongst humans, I'm also talking about the other races that are out there, not the least of which is, as you were asking there, Yldrbac, and I sure hope I'm pronouncing your name right. If I'm not, my apologies. The reality of it is that when we're talking to each other, you have to be honest. Okay. The thing that humans have learned extremely well is how to misstate what they're aiming for. Okay, misstate the intentions they've got. Now, yesterday I had a massive problem with computers. And I have problems with computers anyway, but it's carried on into today. Now, I'm just looking to see, because I can see easier on this screen here than I can on that one. Whoop. Okay, we do not need the noise level. But when we're talking to any race, it does not. iVoice, how you doing? Actually, I think that's iVoice. iVoice is I. How you doing? And Aussie Sue, glad to see you've joined us. Joe, welcome aboard. When we're talking about communicating, when I go down the street, and bear in mind, I don't leave the house much, but when I do go out, thank you so much, Joe, I appreciate that. When I do go out, the one important thing I do, YJ, welcome aboard. And Bones, how are you? The reality of it is that when I go out, if I see somebody, I don't care what age they are or who they are, I'll say hello to them on the way by. And the thing is, if you put a smile on your face, okay, when you put a smile on your face, it makes much bigger of an impact. Now, for those of you that have kids, or for that matter, have interactions with other races, and I don't mean just other races of humans, it did finally dawn on me that when people are talking humans, there are multiple different races. Okay, you've got your Negroid, you've got your Orientals, you've got your so-called First Nations, you've got the Southern people, you've got your Australians. I mean, these are all different groups of people, but you are all of the same species. Logan, welcome aboard. You've all got your own individual identities, you've got your own belief structures. But when we start recognizing and acknowledging the fact that we have these similarities as well, we can eliminate a lot of the conflict. Now, one thing I made a point of yesterday, I know I've made it before, is war does not bring peace. Okay. How you doing there? We already got to you. The reality is war, conflict does not bring peace at all. Okay. It brings quiet. Absolutely. But we have to realize that it brings quiet because of fear. Now, one of the easiest things that you can do in life is, quite frankly, because it's not hard, it doesn't hurt, it's scary as heck for a lot of people. But one of the biggest things you can do in life is reach out and get to know the people around you, get to know your neighbors. Okay. The sad reality of it is that all the way through your life, you are taught to fear everything. Now, this starts when you're a child. Okay. And I don't blame anybody really, because if you think about it, your parents were taught the same way as were theirs. This has been going on for centuries. Okay. Now, the reality of it is that every race I've run into has the same problem. As a matter of fact, every species. Okay. It's just for us humans, for the people here, humans have really taken it to an interesting high, because we're told, believe in a creator, an all-loving creator who is as vindictive as they get, and you should fear not doing what you're told. Well, guess what? I don't know about you. I respected my father immensely. Okay, now my father had a bad habit. He's passed now. But my father had a bad habit. Okay, if anybody swore in front of a woman, not necessarily his woman, not anybody he was dating, just in front of a woman, my dad had a short temper. Okay, and he would beat the daylights out of them. Okay, and carry on. But he always told me, walking away from a fight is so much better than taking the first swing. The answer to your question there, Joe, yes, sandworms do in fact exist. Thankfully, not on Earth. Okay, but you will find sandworms on a few other places. Mars is one of them. Okay, you will find them on the Strazazian homeworld, and in some parts of the grays, in some parts of the Zeta Reticulum system, you will also find them. By the way, strong recommendation: don't go looking for them. Not the post, and not the most auspicious time, if you will, for not the most, shall we say, friendly race, because they will eat pretty much anything and anyone. And they don't even think about it. It is just a matter of turning the soil over and breaking things down. It's part of the digestive tract of the Caborans. Okay, bear in mind the Caborans are a planetary race, a planet-sized race. You're standing on one right now. How you doing there, Philip? Glad you made it. The reality is I had to get things straight in my own head, because I became reclusive very early in life. I was looking back through some notes of mine, and it turns out, much as I thought people were shunning me when I was a kid, I wrote, where is it? Right there. This is not actually in print per se, and that's going to sound really wrong. It is not for sale at this point. Okay. But I wrote this book. This is actually literally a channeled autobiography. And it's a long story short, I wrote it without knowing what I was writing until 4 years after I wrote it. Okay, but it turned out, when I got looking at that book, a staggering number of spelling errors, which I will not correct. But what I discovered Okay. Okay. iVoice. That is an extremely good question. Now, you call him Jesus. Yeah, in all fairness, just to be clear, his name was Yeshua. Okay. The name Jesus could not come into existence, as far as I understand it, until the middle of the 17th century because the J did not exist in the language. That said, his true purpose was very simply, he had one message and he made two mistakes with it. Okay. He had one purpose, and that was to tell people, get along. Okay. Just be nice to each other. That was ultimately the purpose. The other side there, and I know this is going to set some people off. Yeshua never did want anybody to worship him. He had no interest in sitting on top of a pedestal and going, I'm better than you. Okay. The reality of it, the reality of his purpose was he came here simply to remind people that no matter who you were, whether you had money, whether you didn't have money, whether you were rich, poor, ill, healthy, it didn't matter. You were all of equal value. You were all equally deserving of love. Okay. And of acceptance. That was the overall message. Okay. Did he ever want you to worship him? Not at all. In all fairness, the reality is worship is something that mankind desires, not Jesus. And I know that's going to upset some people. Okay. But like I've mentioned before, subtlety and diplomatic responses aren't really viable. Like for me, they just don't work that well. Now I'm just looking at this here. Yeah, this movie Tremors. If you look at Tremors, those are again some of the real creatures you'll find underground in certain areas. Just thankfully not on Earth. Okay, rest assured, if they'd have been on Earth, we'd have found them a long time ago. But I do agree with you. The movie was great. Looking at Tremors, when I look at Tremors, I remember that the gun in the back corner of the basement. The one that I forget what the actor's name was, but Reba McEntire's husband in that show had a 460 Magnum. Okay, excellent gun, but let us understand. Violence, war, great things for stories, great for actions. Okay, hey Spooky, how you doing? They're absolutely great stories for entertainment purposes. For books, for movies, for video games, absolutely no problem. In real life, they are virtually useless. Okay. They cause a staggering amount of damage, and frankly, I have yet to see them actually encourage proper civilization growth. Okay. They are absolutely, you're absolutely correct there, Philip. They have great stories of wisdom, of humanitarianism. I remember, they do have a lot of leeway. Now, I watched the movie D-Day. Okay. I watched the way they portrayed it. And then years and years later, good afternoon, Chad. Glad you can make it. Years and years later, I ran into a gentleman. As a matter of fact, he became a good friend of mine as a neighbor. And he was on the beaches of Normandy. And he told people, like he told me, he says, look, they show in the movies, they show people running back to grab their friends and then drag them to safety. According to him, and like I said, he was there. According to him, nobody ran back for their friends. You ran for cover and prayed to get there. And then once the fighting stopped, you went back out and prayed that they were still alive. I didn't actually see. I'm just looking at that there, Joe. I didn't actually see Tremors 2. I didn't even know there was one. But the reality of it is, when we're talking about communication amongst everybody. Now, I was told years ago by a friend of mine. I was told point blank, Keith, you've got to learn tact. And I looked at the person. I went, tact. They said, yeah, the ability to tell somebody to go to guess where and have them look forward to the trip. I says, I've only got one problem with that. I will get to those in just a little bit there, Chad. But the answer to your question is yes. I looked down and I says, I only have one problem with this whole idea of being that politically correct. She goes, what's that? I says, look, if I'm mad enough to tell somebody where to go, why do I care what they feel like? Okay, why do I care if they are happy with the request or the guidance for that matter? Let me see. I'm looking for one in particular here. There we go. Haven't got them painted yet, primarily because of the fact that, being Christmas, I've got other projects I've got to deal with. Right now, I'm in the middle of backing up my writing because of the glitch that I have with the computer. So I'm in the middle of backing that up to make things work. Okay. Absolutely. The reality, the thing is, when we start looking at this whole situation, no, Lord, no. Here's one of my newest figures. Okay. And as you can see, not a nice guy, but I don't have the hand. If I relax concentration on my hand, watch this. Here's another one that I picked up. Okay, but watch what happens if I relax concentration on my hand. But there it is sitting there. Now, if I relax concentration, this is just the way my hand is. You can see how fun that would be to try and paint. So no, airbrush is just on. I don't have the equipment for it. I used to have a what you call it? I used to have a 2 horsepower air compressor, but I had a girlfriend that ended up taking that with her. From my standpoint, like if you look at children, if you tell a child or an adult for that matter that they are stupid, and you tell them this often enough, what you will end up with a child coming out and literally believing they're stupid. Now, there are stupid actions. Okay, there are, I'd like to say there weren't stupid questions, but you really got to wonder sometimes. Did I see you come in there, Philip? If not, my apologies. Welcome aboard. When we're looking at, when we are looking at telling people what you think of them, I mean, absolutely, I'm about as blunt as I get. Okay, and yet I refuse to swear if I'm not mad. I had somebody ask me the other day. They confirmed my name was Keith. And remember when I said there are very few stupid questions? The guy looks at me and he goes, now bear in mind, this was over text. But he says, he asked if I was Keith. I says, yeah. He goes, he turns around and he says, are you a ma'am? Now, I don't know about you, but the name Keith is pretty cut and dried for me. Okay, it really is. And I never even thought about it. I looked at it and I says, how many cruel parents do you know? Keith is an absolutely clear male name. And that's again what is important. Letting kids know they can pull it off. Encouraging them to do. But when I talk about doing the right thing, it used to be normal when I was growing up for people to just simply smile and hold the door open for anybody. Never mind seniors, never mind them being a woman. It was just open the door and hold it. How much trouble could it be? Yes, I think you're the green one. Yeah, you're referring to this one. Okay, this one was made by Tonka. I got it when I was somewhere in my very early teens. Okay, but this is not plastic. This is die-cast metal. Okay, the neat part about it is my father used to sell these things, and my father used to sell what were called amphicats, 6-wheel dune buggies. Went over sand, rock, water, in the bush, didn't matter. The only thing they didn't do was they didn't fly. But you could drive them off the beach, into the water, and carry on. Okay. Had a lot of fun with this thing when I was a kid. And yeah, you'll notice it's a little dented. Well, it took a number of trips down the stairs, at least as I recall. Trying to get a hold of a few other die-cast ones that my parents had when they passed. Okay. Well, yes, because you're still dealing with a binary binary genome. In other words, the dogmen do have, we call them dogmen. Okay. But we also refer to humans as humans, not as humans. Okay. So there are absolutely, there are male and female dogmen. Okay, virtually every race has the dual gender setup. There are some that that are one gender, and they literally, like the Corlock, for instance, they don't have a gender per se. They simply replicate of their own accord. Oh, no problem there, YJ. The way I figure it, if I'm going to go live and people decide to take a picture, okay, the way I look at it, the government's tracking it all anyway. Anybody that really wants it can find it. Okay, yes, there are. But here's the thing you got to realize about the intersex people there, Philip. Okay, we're not talking about, how we doing there, Ken? When I'm looking at the gender, okay, and there's a lot of conflict of this. But, and I tell you, the modern doctors just completely scrambled things. But you've got two physical genders. There are people that are born heterosexual. That are born not heterosexual. That are born, shoot, I'm drawing a blank on it again. They're born with both sets of genitalia. Okay, now those people, and I forget offhand, hermaphrodites. That's where we go. Those people have a challenging situation. But I'm talking about the physical configuration, not how people relate to each other or whether they relate to what other people are. Like this idea, we found all sorts of ways to isolate ourselves. And this is the problem with communication right now. We are being taught that finding new and exciting ways to make yourself different. Okay, because you don't relate to other people. Okay, or because you don't agree with what they're saying. The same thing has happened to religion, to politics. So what we're looking at, give us another 50 years at our current rate. Bearing in mind right now, we have from the information I pulled off the internet, we have roughly 8 billion people on the planet. Okay, now given our current rate of gender separation and ideological separation, in 50 to 100 years, we are going to have in excess of 8 billion genders. Everybody wanting equal treatment. Okay, everybody going, I'm different, therefore I deserve better treatment. And you really don't, frankly. It doesn't matter how much money you've got, you're still going to die. Okay, now granted, people like me are a little weird. I was clinically dead, as in the doctors had to restart me 4 times before I hit 10 years old. And other people had to restart me another half dozen afterwards. Okay, well, I shouldn't say other people necessarily. I did it myself in a number of cases. Okay. The neat little part about it, I'm just looking up here to see what's going on. Going back here, iVoice. Yeah, no. Okay, what iVoice asked is, are some angels demons still in physical bodies, or are they all spirits? Well, first of all, angels and the angelus race are what you know as angels, and they are a separate race unto themselves. Demons are another issue altogether. Okay, and yes, there are some demons that will overlay, or will, if you will, take over a human, or take on a human form, as in they will come in human form, but with the dominant memory as a demon. Okay, now when they come in, what you have is some of the, what do we call them, some of the psychopaths that are out there, the absolute total psychopaths that just kill whoever. Some of those are demons that just simply, when you come in, usually what happens when you're born, you forget your past life altogether. Okay. In my case, I remember a lot of mine. But some people come in and they bring with them the memory of their last race, and they hold that kind of an idea. Okay. You take a look at somebody. This is another one of those figures I picked up. Okay, that I still have to paint. And again, as you can see, these are the fantasy side of it. Okay. But I've got a fair number of them. This one here is one I really like. No, not that one. Oh, that's because it's over there. Don't know where it is offhand. Okay. In all fairness, Philip, I have no doubt about that. I got a little sidetracked here. Before I was 6. Okay. Before I was 6, I was already studying paleontology and zoology. But I got a little sidetracked with it when I got caught up dealing with human psychology. When we're talking about looking at the communication side of it, people talk about, and I mean, it's December, let's just open a can of worms. Number one, let's understand that the birth date that they have that is given, and it's just going back to that funny little question that was asked a little earlier. Okay. Jesus, quite frankly, from my understanding and my memories, was not born on December 25th, but we celebrated there, and we can go into all kinds of reasons of why. Okay. My understanding is he was born November 6th of 4 BC. But December 25th works well. Okay. There's all kinds of overlaps we could get into, and most of them I don't know, so I'm just not going there. That's the funny thing there, Joe. I do agree with you wholeheartedly. The God, the one and only, the creator of all things, I absolutely agree wholeheartedly that he is the creator. He does exist. So did Jesus. Funny thing is, God doesn't judge you. He set it up in such a way that you literally judge yourself. He set it up so that you had absolute free will and freedom of choice. Now, I'm going to really cross over things here because, again, it comes down to the communication to belief structures. Okay. And, since December 1st, this is actually my third Christmas movie I've watched today. Not today, since December 1st. I have a rule in my house. Nothing about Christmas gets discussed before December 1st or after December 31st. Okay, we don't have music on, we don't have Christmas decorations, we don't have Christmas movies. None of it opens. But the question comes up about where Santa fits into the whole thing. And again, it boils down to communication. Okay, and belief structure. Yes, but you got to understand the thing there, Philip. The Bible says a lot of things. People have forgotten what the original meaning was. A bosom is literally, yes, it is the chest, but it's a physical. It's not the physical human chest that we're talking about. God didn't have a physical form. What God had, or more to the point, has, is the ability to take on any form he chooses. When he's talking about holding somebody to his bosom, he's talking about hugging them, wrapping them in unconditional love. Okay, it's got nothing to do with physiology. Yeah, there's a trust me, Philip, that is not the worst I've heard. Okay. Now, here's the thing. I just lost 50 pounds. I'm not putting it back on. But I appreciate the vote there, iVoice. The reality of it is the gentleman that was Santa Claus, as in the actual Saint Nick, you should look into the history of it, but he actually did go around giving the poor kids toys and what have you. Myself, I go around, I don't do it just one time a year. When I had the money, and of course, after my estate comes in, I'll be able to do it again. I remember one year, I wrote out 5 Christmas cards. I didn't have a lot of money at the time, right? A lot of spare money, because bear in mind, I happen to have a house and 2 kids, one of which is, a house and 2 kids, one of which is special needs. So I've got this funny little thing about money. Honestly, Philip, I really have never heard of that one before. I know what a necromancer is, don't get me wrong. Okay. But the actual Saint Nick, from what I understand, was simply an older, well, they made him a saint because of his attitude. Okay. But he was simply a gentleman that made a lot of individual toys and handed them out to people, handed them out to kids. Left them on the doorsteps is where it started. Now the whole story has gotten blown out of sync. But the backbone of it is very simple. And if you look at the Christian religion and many of the religions, okay, we go back to the birth of Christ. And it was the wise men who, by the way, if you think about their description and the way it was laid out, were astrologers. Okay, they were also astronomers, by the way. But they brought gifts on Christmas Day to the baby Jesus. Okay, as in gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, the funny thing about it is, we take a look at that, then we take a look at the Christmas tree that we have, and that was something that the pagans, from what I understand, the pagans did that one. But they didn't necessarily hang candles on it. Well, they gave up candles when they burnt too many down. But all of these celebrations are interacted, and the important factor that we have to learn is when you take a look at the Christian religion. My understanding is King Henry VIII was Catholic until he decided he desired a divorce, and the Catholic Church, which had nothing, their ruling had nothing to do with God. God said, go forth and multiply, and frankly, be nice to each other, which is what Christ came back to tell people and to remind people. But King Henry VIII turned around, wanted a divorce, and the church says no. So King Henry VIII decided to start his own, the Protestants, where he could get a divorce. But that wasn't the backbone of it. Okay, the funny part about it, okay, of that whole thing, is the other part of that equation was that King Henry VIII found out that every time somebody died without a will, the church got all of the land. So the other driving force behind starting that religion was so that when the people died without a will, the land went to King Henry VIII. Kind of an interesting idea when you think about it. I'm just looking because one of the things I like about going live is things like what's happening here. Phil Blair has just added in here. The last day of Christmas is January 5th. January 6th is Epiphany, where the Magi brought the gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Spanish call it Three Kings Day, and that's when they do gift exchange. I do appreciate the update. The correction, or however you want to put it. I really do. Do I know everything going on? Not a snowball's prayer. What I do know is that the fact that somebody does not agree with you does not necessarily make them wrong. Okay, somebody's opinion, in simplest terms, anybody's opinion cannot be wrong. Okay, the facts they are working with absolutely can be wrong. The conclusions that they come to because the facts are wrong are certain to be mislaid. Okay, years ago I was running a radio station. I was running a radio show, another live show, where I actually brought guests on. Okay, but the problem with that, well, actually it wasn't as big a problem. I had other people helping. But here's the neat little thing about it. I had a well-placed member of the Roman Catholic Church and a well-placed member of the Church of Satan on the same radio show. Within an hour, I had the two of them agreeing with each other. Okay, and I started off with a misconception much like you. The difference between the Church of Satan and the Roman Catholic Church is virtually indistinguishable, except for one critical point. Okay, that being the Christian Church says that all of this metaphysical stuff and magic is all evil, which begs the question of why in the bottom of the Vatican they train people to use tarot. Okay, the Church of Satan goes, magic works, absolutely use it, but if you're going to use it to get ahead, acknowledge the fact you're using it, because if you disavow the fact you use magic, you will lose everything. Okay. And, that's the thing, Joe, is for me, I don't go to church. I really don't. But then again, that's because of the fact I don't leave my house much. But do I still believe in God? Absolutely. Many of the off-world races and the ancient races also believe in God. Okay. They've got their own belief structures. Many of them they actually correspond with mankind, with humans. Okay. And yes, in answer to that other part of the question, many of these races have taken some of our celebrations and utilized them as a way to find, I think in some people's cases, find a reason to have a party. That doesn't surprise me there, Philip. One of the best trained tarot readers I ever met grew up being trained in the Vatican itself. Okay, now I'm not one to say one way or the other whether you want to believe it's good, bad, or indifferent. What I will tell you is the way you see the world as an individual is not the only way that people look at it. Yeah, and that was the whole thing. We were asked a little earlier there, YJ, what Christ actually came here for. Well, what he came here for was to tell people everybody is of equal value. Get along. Treat your neighbor the way you desire to be treated. Now, I mentioned at that point that two mistakes were made. Okay, and the first mistake he made, was when he ran into the Jewish people. They claimed they were the chosen people. They weren't the chosen people, and I know that's going to upset people. Okay, bear in mind, this is my opinion. Okay, but they were not the chosen people. They were simply the first people. If you go into an auditorium, into a great big gala, into a great big event, And you go in, there's a whole mix of people, different races, different species, different genders, the whole 9 yards. You go into this place, and you stop and talk to a gentleman. You stop and talk to a young, a young adult, male or female. Stop and talk to the first person. Are they the chosen person, or are they simply the first one you ran into and talked to? Okay, that was the first mistake. They weren't the chosen ones. They were simply the first. As he said, okay, and I will repeat this as often as I have to. Okay, God loves all his children. In other words, every one of you. Doesn't matter. Same as Santa does not, Santa Claus never differentiated between which kid was following which group of people, or which adults were doing what. Okay. He never looked at the political alignments. Oh, no, in all fairness, didn't know you heard that. No, in all fairness, YJ, that would be my other half texting me, so I'll have to get back to her a little while later. Okay. Because quite frankly, she lives down in Utah. And yes, in answer to that question, that means that young lass, when I can get her across the border, and I've already told her, I will end up asking her to marry me. I do not know if she'll say yes yet. Okay, but we'll figure that out. Okay. But here's the kicker. From my end, it's not a question of how am I going to deal with it. At this point, it's simply, I'm not looking for anybody. Okay, I was asked the other day whether or not I was taken. I'm like, yeah, I am. Granted, she doesn't live in my house yet, but I think that might have something to do with the fact. Yeah, it is. And with the borders a bit of an issue, my driving down there or her coming up here, she won't drive up here. Of course, in all fairness, like I told her, I'm not a controlling individual, but I will not back up the idea of her driving. Okay, anywhere. Okay. Now, do understand, I've got nothing against women driving. I have a problem with blind people driving. Okay, in her case, she's 100% blind, so yeah, she's not driving anywhere. Yeah. See, I haven't been on eBay in years. But no, sometimes the dings will come through real clearly. Should probably deal with this, that'll solve that problem, though. So I'm just letting her know I'm on live, and I'll talk to her soon. So, pardon the interruption, and if you don't, well, that's the way that goes. The reality is, when we're talking about communication, when people ask me a question, the thing I always make certain of is I'll be straightforward with you. Okay. You're wondering why I'm standing up in this case? It's because my temperature is going through the roof. And therefore, I have no choice. Well, I've got a choice. I could say no. But I have to drop my temperature here. Net result, open the window. Well, that's just it. When we start looking at the different cultures, okay, the country dancing culture, that the whole family unity thing, they've got down fine. They do have their glitches. Okay. I mean, myself, I grew up in the middle of the Bible Belt in BC here. Right. Well, that's the reality behind it, Philip. In my opinion, have whatever preference you desire, but treat the people you're dealing with the way you desire to be treated. Like I was talking to somebody today. They asked me a question, and I went to answer it, and they interrupted me. I said, "Fine, you don't want the answer. What? I'm not allowed to state my opinion. I'm not allowed to say anything." I said, "Not when you've asked me a question, and you're waiting for an answer. At that point, no, you don't. So I'm just not dealing with it." Not the politest way to put it, but it got the point across. There, man. Doesn't matter too much to me. Oh, you misunderstand, YJ. I didn't say I wouldn't date her. I intend on marrying her. I said I wouldn't let her drive. At least not in downtown traffic. I figured out a way where she can have the experience of driving. And I will set it up when she's here. I know where to go and how to set it up so she can have that experience without running into anything. Okay. But it's like, I was talking to one chap who flat out told me, he goes, why would you connect with a blind person? You're just asking to be, you're just asking for, to be a caretaker for the rest of your life. I'm like, you've never met a blind person, have you? Because they've got more drive than many of the people I know of that are sighted. But then again, I didn't fall in love with the fact that the woman was blind. I couldn't have cared much less. Okay. The thing we have to realize is there are differences in everybody. But almost all of them are correctable. Okay. In other words, if you're not content with something in your life, it is something that can be modified. Oh, I keep getting sidetracked here. The other mistake that was made when Yeshua got here in the first place, yes, he let the Jewish people think they were the chosen ones. But that wasn't the other thing. That wasn't the biggest one. He forgot to include the off-worlders and the ancient races in his endeavors. He did not, however, forget to include what we are calling North American Indians, or what some people call First Nations. If they were from back when living in the caves, now we've got the First Nations. But that's my personal opinion. I get in trouble for it quite regularly. Okay. But Yeshua didn't include the off-worlders, and it was something he couldn't correct because they weren't exactly prolific at that point. They were there. They were here even then. Well, quite frankly, they were here 40,000 years ago, and then some. Okay. But we really have to deal with it. Yeah, it's, the fact of the matter is, that when you're dealing with people, if you tell somebody, and this is where we run into the problem with society, many people look at the size of their pocketbook going, I'm worth more than you because my bank book says so. Okay, well, I can write numbers on a bank book too, or on a sheet of paper. The problem is, what do we got here? Yeah. No, the reality is, Philip, there are also all around the world, there are places where the belief in the Bible, the belief in that side of things is much more rampant than other parts of the country. In my case, it was literally everybody went to church. We all did. Okay. And the reason I stopped going was because my dad he became the superintendent of Sunday schools. And he told everybody, he says, look, we've got a youth group here. And when Dad took it over, there were 40 people in the youth group, aged 6 to 18. And Dad put out word. He says, I don't care what religion you are. I don't care if you have a religion. We have a youth group. Understanding it is based on the Christian church, in the Protestant church. We do focus our efforts around those teachings. But, okay, he says, it doesn't matter to me. If you fit between the age of 6 and 18, come and join us. If you're over 18, we can use the help. Come and join us. In 13 years, Dad took that group from 40 people to 240. Okay. And then we had a pastor come in, because we got a new pastor from a different denomination every 3 or 4 years. And we had one come in, and he walks into the youth group, and he goes, If you are not of this specific denomination, get out. Now, from my end, my whole family walked out of the church at that point because it went against everything that we had believed in. Okay. And again, when we take a look at these different groups, the Mennonites have got, when you think about it, my understanding, and there's another group other than the Mennonites that have stuck to the old ways. They rely on physical work. They rely on non-technological advances in order to move forward. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It bonds the family together so much better. The thing I keep recommending for people, and it doesn't even work entirely in my house, okay? But if you pick one meal of the day, breakfast, lunch, or supper, it doesn't matter which one, pick one meal of the day, and everybody in the household, shut your phones off, sit down, shut the TV off, and have a meal together and talk. Okay, that is where you where you get your bonding. That is where you find out what your family is up to. Much like you, Philip, I can't stand bullies at all. Okay, I grew up under them. Okay, I was lucky I had a family that got a little carried away with trying to protect me. But I take a look at it. Okay. Yeah, no doubt. The neat part about it, and this is where we get into, this is where religion has created a problem. Okay. When you're talking about something, you must be true to yourself first. Even in anger. Okay. Even in anger, you still have to think about what you're saying. And I'm guilty as guilty as you are. I will say things when I'm mad that it's not that I mind what I've said, but I could certainly say things in a better fashion. Okay. But I've run out of tolerance for a lot of it, which is really bad when you think of what I'm working on. Now, like I've mentioned to people, okay, I came back to this world at this point, at this stage in life, at this time for one primary purpose, and that is to once again remind people that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. Okay, now there will certainly be people that don't like it. Okay, when I'm talking about, and we talk about charity and giving to the poor, etc., which I'm all for. Will I ever donate to a church or to what they call a registered charity aside from the food bank, where I'll take actual food, or the SPCA, which again I will take actual food for them? Okay. Will I ever donate to a registered charity? No. Okay, and here's why. From my research, and I spent a lot of years looking into it. Okay, the majority of them, you're lucky if the charity you're donating to gets 10% of the money you're giving them. The rest of it goes to administration costs, not to the people that need it. So what I do is I'll go to the grocery store, and if I've got an extra $50 and I see somebody in lineup, I don't ask how much money they've got. Okay, I will simply pay for their food or pay for a meal in the restaurant if I'm in there. Okay, a few years back, I didn't have a lot of cash, so I took 5 Christmas cards and I just simply wrote Merry Christmas on them. Okay, and for me, that's what I say. You don't like the term? I got over it, and I put in the card Merry Christmas from Inner Enterprises. Okay, and all I put in that card was a $20 bill in cash. That's it. Okay, now if they want to look me up, it's not that hard to find me. Okay, but I just simply handed them the card and walked off. Didn't wait around. Okay, and I would watch the people and decide who it felt was requiring it, or who felt like it would work best. Okay, yes, I did look at the ones that look for the ones that were having a little more trouble than the others. Okay. The thing, I had a problem with the food bank for a while because I heard tell that people working there were taking the cream of the crop. And I got thinking about it going, well, if they're taking it, they're in trouble as well. So it's still food, and it's still going to somebody that requires it. Okay. Now, see, the moment you start differentiating between, and I'm just looking at what you said here, Philip, that they put southern denominations. Okay, the second that you're identifying them as southern or as something else, right off the bat, okay, it's the same as life. Once you start identifying a particular group and saying that's a lesser group, that right there goes against everything that Jesus was teaching. It goes against everything that teaching people to be kind to each other goes away. Absolutely, he did. Ken, in all fairness, Jesus was over here at the time that the North American Indians were just getting set up with the same message. Only the difference there is the North American Indians got the message that was supposed to be got, for the most part, about taking care of the land as well. This, people look around, where was the Garden of Eden? Okay. And many people have identified that location in the religious teachings as the junction between the Euphrates and the Tigris, if I recall my training correctly. Okay. The Garden of Eden, paradise, is right here, right on this planet. Wherever you're standing, that's where you can make it. Okay. I learned how to talk to the animals, how to talk to the plants years ago. Or maybe I never forgot. I'm not sure which. Okay. The unfortunate part is that, when we take a look at, what do we got here? Yeah, you got to remember, Bones, stereotypes are it's a natural tendency of every race I've ever run into, of finding a way to cubbyhole people and go, this is how they fit. Okay. But the other thing we have to remember is every single person, okay, every group of people have, they got their own views. They don't all fit in the same mold. You will find some people on the street that are absolutely using people. You'll find people in every walk of life that absolutely use people. And you'll find people that will give the shirt off their back from every walk of life. Okay. You'll find people that talk to others as equals. Myself, when I'm dealing with people, it never registers on me aside from the height. The age of the person is not how I dictate how I talk to people. Okay, for me, I start off where I'm comfortable, and if they don't get it, then I'll downgrade the communication lines and do my best to explain it. Okay, but we have to realize not everybody has the same level of communication. They don't have the same level of education. They don't have the same experiences. Okay, and this is what we have to realize, is when we're talking to each other, you're working from your own database. Okay, now, absolutely, some people, there are stereotypes that happen. Okay. And, the reality of it is, I loved it one day. I was talking to a gentleman, and he says, you never have to actually explain yourself. I looked at him, and I says, you want to run that by me again? I says, there's a lot of confusion going on. He says, yeah. But he says, think about it. Your friends don't require an explanation as to what you're aiming for, and your enemies don't deserve one. I have run into people that are absolutely, my father, like I said, my father was the superintendent of Sunday schools of the Comox Valley, and he taught people to accept everybody. Okay, he was doing sermons on a regular basis every Sunday before the actual pastor came in. Okay, and he treated everybody equal. Okay, but then we had this pastor who was trained, he was ordained, came in and destroyed the whole church, in my opinion. He walked in, he goes, if you're not of this exact denomination, get out. But we've got to get back to the simple things in life. Now, we mentioned, okay. Yeah, I don't argue, damage that is done. Oh, okay. See, here's the thing, and that is another one of the, and don't take this the wrong way, whatever you do, Blair, my apologies, Philip, whatever you do, don't take this personally. Okay. I know people very well that are in the same community, and yet I've watched people in that community turn around and go, literally, you cannot be gay. You've got kids. There is no way you're gay. Get out. Now, these are individuals inside a community that the overall idea is a really good one. Okay, where you're individuals, but now what's happening is it's fragmented. Okay, and it was great. Taking a community of people that are not being recognized and going, we're people too. Okay, I mean, and I'm going to go sideways here for a minute. I used to run a game. Okay, I still run a game, but I used to run a campaign in D&D. It was actually Champions was the game I was playing. Okay, and I was running. And we had a bar in there called Mutants Are People Too. Okay, basically it boiled down to this. Every one of you is equal. Every one of you should be treated with the same respect as every other one. Okay. When I'm looking and like my home is not perfect. Do not get me wrong. Okay. My son and I mean, he's 17 and he and I do not see eye to eye all the time. But we do have respect for each other. And that is ultimately the key that we all have to take a look at. We've got to look at this thing when you're dealing with people. Okay. When you're dealing with people, you've got to treat them the way you desire to be treated. If you're talking to somebody, make certain whatever you're telling them, however you're addressing them, make certain that is in a way that you would appreciate. Okay, that you would respond well to. If it is not, don't talk to them that way. It's the same as when you're going to sell something. And whenever you're going to sell something anywhere, look at what you're striving to sell and ask yourself this. Don't ask, how much can I get for it? Ask yourself, how much would I be willing to pay for it? Okay, because if you're not willing to pay the price you're setting on it, then frankly, you shouldn't be selling it at that price. When I take a look at these, because of what it cost me to produce them and ship them out and what have you, okay, I set the price and I looked it up. This book is $40. Okay, now it's a complete novel. We take a look at this one, which frankly has a much better shot at altering people's lives than the Yldrbacian Chronicles. This one, okay, is only 20 shipped. Okay, but this one has the capacity of changing the way your life actually goes. It's got the backbone tools in it. And the reason I know they work is because, number one, I use them. Number two, I have literally sold hundreds of them to people and given hundreds away. The information that I've handed out has been given to literally thousands upon thousands of people. I figured it out a couple of years ago. And based on the number of people I've been dealing with, it turns out I've got in excess of 80,000 clients under my belt. Okay, of people that have simply reached out looking for understanding, looking for how to deal with personal complications. And don't kid yourself. In my field of work, 80 to 85% of what I do, I can absolutely explain how I do it. May not be understandable to you, but I can explain it to you. I can't understand it for you. Okay. But when we're talking about communication, it doesn't matter what you look like. Your language matters, and there's a lot of times when people of different languages or different species have to figure out a different communication technique. A lot of sign language, pointing at things and repeating it. Like for instance, and this is something Gene Roddenberry pointed out. Okay, what he said, Gene Roddenberry, the guy that created the Star Trek series, the original Star Trek, he pointed out something very important. When you're dealing with off-worlders, when you're dealing with aliens, non-human species, if you hold up this to any human, anybody raised in a human environment, you hold up a vessel like this and you put it forward and you go, coffee? Okay, any human, they may not know what you're saying, but they will get the idea that this is being offered to you. Okay, that you're being offered whatever this is. It is being suggested you take it. Okay. Now, what the humans know is it's something that's being offered. It's a vessel that holds liquid, usually. Okay, that's what we're being taught. An off-worlder, when you go coffee, the question they have to ask, and that's disconcerting from my standpoint. Okay, when they hold up a cup and they go, when a human holds up a cup to a non-human entity and goes coffee, here's the question. Am I talking about the liquid in the cup? Am I talking about the cup? About the color of it? Am I talking about the difference in the coloring here? Am I offering you something, or am I actually threatening you? This is the thing we have to realize, is you have to figure out how to communicate with people, but you've got to do it based on your own experiences. And every one of you has been hurt in some way. You may not want to admit it. Okay. You may not want to admit it. I mean, I grew up with glasses. Okay, up until I was in grade 7, I didn't wear them. Okay, I'm just closing my window again. Yes, some people would say, well, why don't you turn the heat down? Well, because my temperature itself varies really badly. Okay. Now, in 2000, up until 2007, I was also colorblind. But at that point, if I held my glasses right there, I could not physically see my glasses at all. So, of course, from grade 8 until 2007, okay, I was wearing glasses constantly because I couldn't see anywhere. Now, for reading, I've got 20/20 eyesight because I figured out how to correct my eyesight without surgery, without medication. And this is a method that you too can put to use. Yes, I know that's a bold call, but I've helped other people with it, so I figure why not? The reality is, if it works for me, it can work for you. You just have to believe it's possible. Okay, and then do the necessary work. Okay. Now, of course, the color vision, that was an accident. Okay, I had an overdose of when I broke my arm in 2004. I had an overdose of morphine and anesthetic. And somehow that activated my color eyesight. I still don't have perfect. I have trouble with yellows, apparently, because I can't separate the odd shades of green and blue. They look the same. But the reality is that everything that I do, literally everything I do, you can do. And the biggest thing that has got to be looked at here is people have to start looking at, are you going to fear your neighbor? are you going to fear everything at all around you, as we get taught in so many religions, in so many upbringing, levels of upbringing? Take a look at your educational system. The first thing you're taught is how to stand in line and how to do what you're told, how to fear the side effects of not doing exactly what you're told. Think of it this way, especially if you have children or you work with them, or for that matter, if you work with adults. Ask yourself, which is going to result in better outcome? Or better yet, ask how you respond better. If do you respond better when somebody says, hey, good job, way to go? Okay. And, try this. It may work a little easier for you. Or are you going to respond better if they say, are you a complete idiot? Why would you do it that way? This way works better. Okay, this way works more effectively. Which way are you going to respond more effectively to? Okay, or more amicably to? It's the same thing in every environment. How you talk to people is of a critical nature. The fact that all of you do not believe in the same thing that I believe in is frankly not something I can do much with. Okay, but am I going to tell you you're absolutely wrong for your belief? No, but I will tell you many of your belief structures, like there are so many people in the religious community that go, God's going to come back and straighten all this out. Wrong. Thanks for playing. But here's the reality of that. From what I've seen, so many people believe it that they're sitting back waiting for somebody else to get off their tail feathers and correct the problem. You have the ability to correct the problems in today's world. Now, you cannot change the guy down the street, but, okay, you too, eh? I sadly, Philip, in my case, when I get hate coming at me, in case you hadn't noticed, I've got a bit of a sarcastic bend to me now. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But like you, if somebody comes at me with anger, I'm going to find a way to shut them out because I've got no use for it. Okay, like I said, I'm a pacifist. There's no question there. Hey, Ange, glad you made it. I haven't, technically the answer would be yes. As far as Buddhism goes, can't show it to you right now, but I've actually got a book called The Teachings of Buddha. I haven't read through it yet, but then, like I said, I'm a lousy researcher. But in simplest terms, I remember lifetimes way back. I literally remember walking. I remember coming, the journey down from Mount Sinai. I remember Sodom and Gomorrah. I remember the fall of the Roman Empire. And here's the funny thing with the fall of the Roman Empire. It wasn't just people revolting. It was that the banks pulled the support money. That's what crippled the government, is the banking system. All the banks, all the people that owned the money went, no, we're not loaning it to you anymore. We want it all back. And that's what blew the bottom out of it. Okay. The reality of it is when you realize, and this is something that science has actually proven, okay, negative energy and positive energy affect the plants in your house and in the world at large. Okay, about 15, 20 years ago, I think it was done in Pennsylvania again, which is really neat. But they took 3 rooms full of plants, all the same plants. Okay, all the same species, the same watering, lighting, you get the picture. One room, that's all they did in it. They just went in, turned the lights on when necessary, watered them and fertilized them, and carried on. Okay, in room number 2, they went in and they had actors go in and play really angry music, really loud music, and they had actors screaming at each other, arguing with each other, swearing at the plants, etc., etc. The plants in that room all withered and died. Okay, they then took the third room, and they took the third room, and they went in, played really soft, loving music, really nice, loving communication, beautiful conversations, really happy singing, dancing, the whole 9 yards. The plants grew like wildfire. Okay, a few years later, there was an orchardist that did the same thing with 3 peach trees. Okay, one tree he just left alone, just did the normal watering. He screamed at the second one, told it how useless it was, told it how absolutely underworking, lazy it was, how it was producing nothing. The peach tree produced extremely minimal fruit. Okay, I don't recall the number, but it was just a few fruit. The third tree, he goes over to it, he's constantly encouraging it, constantly talking to it, hugging it, giving it physical contact. Okay. And that particular tree produced double the volume. Now, you got to remember, mankind is focused on yelling at each other, screaming at each other, telling each other how absolutely useless they are. Okay. Telling them how much difference there is. Oh, you're not like me, so you're a worse person. Okay. Earth is a plant. Okay. And net result, what you've got is an increase in atmospheric disturbances, an increase in earthquakes in both frequency and intensity, an increase in your problematic, atmospheric disturbances, because mankind is fighting so much with itself, it's on the verge of tearing itself apart. Now, you don't have to believe me on this. Okay. Lord knows they didn't years ago when I tried warning him. Tried warning him for 60 years I spent in the Roman Senate. Trying to point out, I appreciate the corroboration there, Carl. I really do. One of these days I'll probably get around to reading the book I've got. The reality of it is I just don't read a lot. Okay. This is why I tell people that I myself, I don't research. Okay. The information I've got is what I came back with. Most people, when you're born, you forget what you learned in the lifetime before. Now, I've forgotten some of it. Okay, and I was not always a decent person. I mean, I look at myself now going, yeah, you got a mouth on you that you might want to learn to curb sometime. And then I usually forget about it. Yeah, and that absolutely works. That's a funny thing. I saw a headline when you start looking at hippies. I saw a headline about 3 years ago that, in my opinion, was absolutely priceless. It was the Chicago Times front page news. Massive rise in violent marijuana addicts. Now, I'm not debating the marijuana that people using marijuana get addicted to it. Okay, never mind the pluses that comes with it. But I'm not debating that they can get addicted to it. The problem I had figuring out was how they would ever get up the energy to be violent. But people used to, and I used to believe it myself. People say that the major media, the media moguls, they are the cause of much of the problem and of today's world. And I used to believe that until the internet came out. Okay, once social media came out, and I started looking at the number of people that were posting things that just didn't add up. like I'm just calling up Facebook here for half a second, just so I get the information right. Now I'm just going into Facebook itself. Okay, and right on my head page, on my front page, what does it say here? Okay, right off the bat, I'm just waiting for it to kick because there's two little spots on Facebook, and quite often what they come up with is this idea of, oh, these are pictures that these actors don't want you to see. Now, I refuse to click on any of these. Okay, and here's why. If somebody has a picture of me that I don't desire them to see, then I'm certainly not going to want it posted on the net. And why would I, or why would you, go and look at these? Oh, don't look here. Natural tendency for people, you're told not to look someplace, first thing you do is look there. Okay. This is just one of the things we do. And unfortunately, the reality behind it is that if you're looking at that, okay, if you're looking it up, what you're doing is you are literally condoning that sort of thing. When people commit a crime, now crimes, first and foremost, we must understand that any law that is written must be communicated in such a way that it applies to everybody, no matter who you vote for, how much money you've got, what gender you are. It doesn't matter. Okay. But when somebody breaks the law, okay, and you post it on the internet or you post it on the front page, I'm not saying bad things shouldn't be reported. But when you post them on the front page, you're giving that person recognition. Okay. That ultimately is the biggest problem you run into. And where are we? Right there. The funny thing there is, Blair, there are some cannabis plants that are quite literally of the arborean race. They do actually get up and move. Okay, yeah. I just finished reading that there. I'm picturing a big cannabis plant sprouting legs and crawling out of a garden, going on a crime spree like a plant in a science fiction movie. Violent marijuana. I love it. I'll tell you, want to watch a really enjoyable B-class movie. Falls under the same category. It was called Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Yeah, in all fairness there, Carl, I actually didn't watch that movie. Okay. Mind you, I also didn't watch the Cheech and Chong movies. Okay. I didn't even get into drugs until about 10 years after that movie got out. But again, it boils down to a communication line. And even when I look at this, the people in this group, the Wolfpack, violent as all get out. But you'll also find that they also have a real solid backbone to them. Okay. And when we're taking, well, that would explain that in a hurry there, Carl. Yeah, well, that would be why I just about read that wrong. I actually thought it said I was from the 30s. But that would make you extremely, well, that would make you extremely old. But no, it was from the 30s. I haven't gone back to those ones. Okay. I did used to watch some of the older black and whites. The best black and white movie, one of the best Christmas movies I ever saw, was the original black and white Scrooge. Okay. The reality is that there are, and this is why I said, I've watched at least one full Christmas movie, and I don't mean The Grinch Stole Christmas. I mean things like the one I'm watching right now, or more to the point, pause to come and do this one, is One Magic Christmas. Yesterday, I watched Miracle on 34th Street, and I forget what the name of the one was I watched the day before. Okay. I think it was One Magic Christmas, come to think of it. Or is that the one and then I'm watching? No, that's this one. Yeah, I had a friend here that was born in, well, we are in 19, must have been born about 1916. I don't know if he's still alive, but last year he was 104. Okay, no, the year before last, he was 104. Okay, so I mean, from my standpoint, I'm 59 right now. I'm aiming at correcting my whole health line to enable me to see the 22nd century. Okay, in a functionally active body, this lifetime. Now that will make me 137 years old. Well, probably very belated, but happy birthday, Ange. You know, the reality is, my dad was a firm believer that if you made it to 70, you were, three score years and 10. You were now at the limit of your life. Well, my dad lived to 81. Come to think of it, so did my mother. In my case, like I said, I'm aiming for the 22nd century, which means I've got another just shy of 80 years to go. Okay. Now, at the beginning, a year ago, I said I'm going to break 200. At the beginning of this year, actually, I said I'm going to break 200 pounds on the downslide before the end of this year. Well, I'm happy to say right now I'm down at 193. Last time I checked was 193.2. Okay. Now I'm aiming at getting a little lighter yet. And I'm starting to work on my physical health, as in my strength. Yeah, the silly part here, when we're looking at Facebook, okay, people put things on there and they're going, look at this stuff that nobody wants you to see. So why are you posting it? Okay, I mean that's the biggest thing you have to look at is why, pray tell, are you posting this stuff if they wouldn't want you to see it? Myself, this is why when people have asked me about other people, I'm not telling you because it's not for me to tell. Okay. The reality is if somebody wants to tell about them, they're more than welcome to. Now, the only reason I've said anything about my other half is because she flat out told me I could. And the reality of it is we have to look at the way that we're dealing with people. You've got to communicate in an honest fashion. Okay. Yeah, my brother had the same problem, only my brother lost at 52. At 51, he lost all ability to communicate and or move. He lasted another year. My grandmother was 93 and still doing her own canning. She finally passed away at 95. So I'm figuring, it wouldn't be a bad thing for me to live that long. I mean, I know a lot of people likely would like me to just, climb up and go away, but, I've never learned how to do that. Yeah, well, that's the thing. People have forgotten. This is why I tell people absolutely imperative that we start looking to some of the older methods of doing things. Okay, right now, realistically, in the last 70 years, okay, society has moved most of its data onto computers. Now, what's going to happen to the human race, to our knowledge base, if we have a massive EMP pulse? Okay, what happens to all that knowledge? I'll tell you what happens. We end up living back in the Stone Ages because nobody knows how to. No, there are a few people that know up here how to actually create metal, how to form plastic. Okay, for that matter, most of them don't know how to sew. Okay. The only reason I don't delete my Facebook is because at this point it is the best method. It's the best method for me to get out and talk to people and answer to that question that I've been asked by other people. Given that transportation is opened, okay, and I can get across the border, then yes, I absolutely intend on being down in Vegas. Hopefully with an invitation, but we'll see what happens. But the reality is, it relies on the border coming down. Okay, because the reality of all of it is that we've got to realize that if we're going to change the world, now here's the way it works. You change the way you treat other people. You change the way you talk to other people. Okay, now you won't affect everybody directly. Okay, but what you will do is each one of those people, and some of those people will go home and go, gee, I felt really good about the way this guy treated me. So they're going to be in a better mood, and they'll treat the people they come in contact with in a more efficient fashion. Net result, you get the ripple effect, and it is in this fashion that we change the world to make it better for virtually everybody. We can do this. Okay, but we have to stop talking about fearing everything around you. I'd stop that because of it, and bone's not a problem. Okay, do you have any advice for people that have been warned by the MIB about talking about their experiences? My personal opinion, I've never listened to them. Mind you, I was never warned. When somebody is in a position to actually viably cause a problem, the two things I would strongly recommend: if you're getting a threat against your life, then it makes logical sense not to push that button unless you're planning on checking out early. But in contrast to that, I would strongly suggest and encourage you to document everything that you can about what you're going through. Okay. Because you may not be able to pass it on now. Okay. I do not recommend going head to head against somebody that's threatening to pull a gun on you, to shoot you or take you out of the equation. To me, this is not helpful. Okay. Do I agree with the threats? No. And I was going to say I've been threatened before. I was actually murdered by the military. That's another issue altogether. And yes, in answer to the question, it was very definitely done by the military in a military laboratory. I was poisoned. I was subsequently pronounced dead and shipped to the morgue. I didn't agree with them, so I left. Okay. The reality is, when you're being threatened, okay, what happens is you're going into this I don't want to die type setup. And the thing you have to realize is you're the one that's going to have to decide whether you're going to take them seriously. I certainly would not, as Philip just pointed out, reporting them to the local UFO organizations or individuals you know of, okay, that may not be as well connected, okay, are absolutely a good idea. Okay, understanding, no matter who you're talking to, like it or not, the government and major corporations are tracking virtually everything said on the internet. Okay, one of the reasons I don't end up in trouble, in my opinion, is that I have never encouraged anybody to do anything stupid. Okay, yes, governments have their problems. People have their problems. Absolutely. That sounds really good. Now, if I could cut, I'm just looking at this. YJ's over here making bacon carbonara, which sounds really good. And if I could time or gauge anything, might be an idea. For me, I just simply work with what I've got, which ain't much, by the way. I do not like things that stick in my foot. They hurt. But those are just a couple of things that you can work with. But get back, because I showed you the way my hand shakes. So what I'm doing is teaching myself to write left-handed again. Okay. The only catch with writing left-handed for me is it comes out mirror image. I'm looking at this and you're making bacon and I'm going like, I wish I had some. But, and then there's the people that say, oh, meat is bad for you. You might want to take a look at the human genome. Humans are omnivorous. They are designed for eating meat, for eating vegetables. But it does have to be a balance. And absolutely, I will tell you this, if you eat like I did when I was young, you'd have the same problem I did. Way too big. And probably, oh, okay. The cream, I have no idea, but, what I usually end up doing is making up noodles and then throwing hamburger or hamburger, a little vegetable, and whatever. Usually, because I don't know how to make cream sauce. So what I do, I don't know how to cook well. So what I do is I'll buy it, like, for instance, you buy a can of, I buy a can of, not a good idea, but it works. Yeah, no doubt. I'll buy a can of, like, for instance, clam chowder and add more fresh seafood to it. Because I don't know how to make the base itself. Now, here's a question for you, Bones. I realize you write with both hands at the same time. Do you write different letters at the same time? As in different documents at the same time? Just a curiosity. Because I don't write with both hands at the same time. Nice. See, now there's a talent. From my standpoint, it's my thinking that is a little off. Okay. I literally, on every question people ask me, on everything I see, I literally see the positive, the negative, and the neutral simultaneously. Okay. Now, I know that's a little twisted on occasion, but you got to realize, in my case, and it wasn't done with a CAT scan, but it was done with 20 years of experimentation with a professional, with a professional psychiatrist. My brain is literally split in two. Okay. Which has enabled me to do that at the same time. That's just a terrible setup there, Blair. Yeah, Philip, I mean, that comment can be taken in so many ways. But yeah, frankly, I've got a day or two on you. The reality of it is everybody has their talents. Okay. My youngest son, who still lives with me, he has a mild case of CP. And he plays on a PS5 with a standard controller. Okay. The left hand doesn't work properly, so he uses a standard controller with one hand. Oh, CP is cerebral palsy. Essentially, he had a stroke in utero. Okay. But when the PS2 came out, he really wanted to play. So I taught him how to play. Okay. I taught him how to play with one hand on a standard controller. Now he plays with people that are using both hands. He's been doing it for years. See, I step onto skates and my right knee buckle. So I don't even bother. I just gave up on the whole idea. I've got I was lucky. I've actually got two legs. But I was lucky I didn't get arthritis out of the deal. But I do have a leg that'll dislocate without any effort. Good afternoon, Nathan. Glad you made it. Just hiding in the shadows, I see. Well, welcome aboard. Glad you joined us. Today has been really, it was really weird, in my eyes anyway. I was not expecting this number of people out. I'm used to getting 5 or 6 people at best. I'm quite happy with this, though. Ultimately, do I desire to get to the rest of the world? Certainly. Okay, because in my opinion, and it's only my opinion, the message I have to get out to people before society buckles, which I'm looking at it going right now, this may not be functionally possible, but I'm going to do my best anyway. And because of the encouragement by people like you guys that I am still on here. Okay. Well, I appreciate the input there and the support there, YJ. It's been really fun trying to figure out when I was going to do things, but this seems to work. Okay, it was funny because I was actually last night when I said it was coming on, I was referring to tomorrow, which means I'll probably be coming on tomorrow at the same time because that's when it fits. See, my Dungeons and Dragons that I play ends at 3 o'clock tomorrow, 4 o'clock at the latest. So if I set things up, I can be ready to go when I get done the game. Ken, how are you? Glad you made it. Yeah, one day I may get back out to Maine, but I don't know how travel's going to work for the time being. They're still coming up with new and exciting ways to screw things up. And the reality is I spent the last 3 weeks I spent fighting double pneumonia. Okay. It's the first time in 25 years I've had anything less than a heart attack. And I'm not sure whether the heart attack is less or the stroke is, but, it's been 25 years since I've had anything. But I did figure out how I came about it. See, when I was a kid, I used to walk by people. If they were ill, I'd absorb their illness so they would heal. And then I'd let my own body take over. Problem was, I let the stress that I was picking up from around the world. Nylock, how you doing? Glad you could join us. I used to pick up illness from people, and I'd literally absorb it and then let my own body heal it. But with the amount of negativity I was facing and the amount of problems that I was seeing, Nathan, I'll put it to you this way: I am far more than willing to come on your show, but here's the catch to it. I work a regular job from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. Pacific. Okay. So those days, during the week, it just won't work. That being said, first thing in the morning or on the weekend, we can work something out. Absolutely drop me a line. There's any number of ways of getting a hold of me. If you look below this video, you'll find a lot of them. Okay. The most common one where it comes to email, okay, you can find, if you've got me here, I don't know. But the only communication lines I tend to use are, as far as actually verbal communication, are Skype, Yahoo Messenger, LinkedIn, it turns out, has a method. And if you can walk me through Zoom, I don't have a problem with it. Other than that, I'm not installing new programs, that's for certain. Okay. But I'm more than willing to come on to any show. That's the easy part from my end. Good evening, Nightmare. Glad you could join us. I keep the video on this screen here so that you're looking at me, but the one I can read easier is over here. I've actually got 4 monitors on my computer. And when my brother's estate comes in, I'm going to lay out and upgrade the whole office and get what I require in here. Yeah, well, that's the thing, is it used to, for me, it never did wear me out. Okay, this time, my son came home. He was down for 5 days with double pneumonia. He couldn't move. Okay. So I absorbed it. 3 days later, he was fine. And then it took me a lot longer to heal than I was expecting. But as soon as I figured out what I'd done wrong, all of a sudden, less than 24 hours later, I'm breathing properly. And yes, this is one of those funny things that can actually be taught. Yeah, Joe, I did. I mean, I've been on Zoom a couple of times. Do I understand it? Can I set up a Zoom call myself? Haven't got a clue how to do that. But I have answered Zoom calls from other people. Okay. What do we got here? I'm just reading what Bones just wrote. Quick question about the propulsion system you were talking about on another video. Does it vibrate at a certain frequency and cause the vehicle it is powering to emit a shimmering glow? Only if they design the bleed off to it. Okay, the engine itself does not vibrate at all. Okay, it does. You even if you put your hand on the side of the engine, you won't feel it. Okay, but sometimes what these people will do is they will take that extra energy because they're getting so much of it, and they will create a distraction by making their vehicle glow. That is usually to draw attention away from another vehicle around them. In other words, you see a vehicle going along, you see it glowing. Your attention goes to the glowing one. That massive one that's over here, you're not seeing. Okay, because it's drawn your attention away from them. Now, the other thing I will tell you is that many races, humans included, can generate that glow around themselves. Yeah, I don't trust any of it, in all fairness. I look at it this way. If, I was just looking at this, Philip saying, Joe is saying he doesn't trust Zoom. From my standpoint, it's simple. If I'm on the air, the government is watching. That's just the way it is. Major corporations are watching to keep an eye on what people are talking about, to keep an eye on what people are doing. Okay. You might be able to, Nathan. Take a look at your hand. Just hold your hand up. Okay. Don't put it in front of a screen because it'll screw you up. But hold it up against a blank wall, like just against your kitchen wall, your living room wall, whatever. Like if you look at the walls I've got behind me, these white ones, they work beautifully. Okay. If you hold your hand up against it, and I don't mean against it, I mean just so that you're looking at the wall behind you. Look at your hand. If you're seeing an equidistant film around the fingers, okay, around the hand, that is what we are referring to. That is the biomagnetic field that humans generate. That is what you use to see that glow. Now, when I started looking, before I had actual color vision, I simply saw field density. Okay. Don't panic on it. The reality is some people's eyes just don't adjust to it right. The reality from your standpoint is take a look at what you can do. Don't worry about the things that you're not yet reaching. Okay, but that's where you start. The other thing you can do, and I showed this to people on a video a little while ago. Take both your hands, put the palms together, and you'll notice they're not touching. You'll feel something there, in all likelihood. You may call it heat, you may call it pressure, you may call it a pulse. I heard one person describe it as bubbles. Okay, but if you focus on that, and then you simply focus on increasing the intensity, by nature, it will give off more energy. And this may be all you require to increase as you can start to take a look at it. Exactly. That is the way that is how I learned to do healing. Best I can tell you there, Nathan, is don't give up on it, but at the same time, don't beat yourself black and blue striving to make it happen. I think it's normal, personally. Of the animal guides I've got the Black Panther, the Raven, and the Wolverine. I know there's one more out there. I just haven't found out where it is. But I talk to my spirit guides, I talk to the deceased, to God, you name it. If they're in non-physical form, I talk to them on a regular basis. So for me, that is just a normal thing. Now, I would have to, what does it say here? Philip's just asking, do you think Matthew 6:22 may in part be about our pineal gland, however you want to pronounce it? Some people have very intriguing theories about it. Not actually knowing what 6:22 is, I honestly don't have an answer for you. Hey, David, welcome aboard. Glad you made it. The funny thing is, otters are wonderful. They are a wonderful guide, and they do teach you, number one, how to relax. And yeah, absolutely, I can see if you got that sassy aspect to you, I can see where that would be bolstered. Me, I've got more of the problem of, sort of a question of, I'll sit and watch, and I prefer it when I'm out on my own. I will talk to people if they approach me. But when I was living in the bar, I went in there, I would drink a lot, and I would just watch the way people were acting and were behaving. I mean, the reality of it is, it all boils down to the same thing. Being honest about who you are, especially with yourself. I'm quite willing to tell people. I will speak my mind. Somebody asks me a question, I seldom actually think about the answer. Usually it's a question of, here's the response. Oh, they are. When I was working at the golf club, another group that you see that is really fun to watch is your groundhogs. Okay. Because when I was working at one particular golf club, we had a family of groundhogs that had dug into the wall. And everybody that went golfing, it didn't matter how good you were, if you did not get a hole in one, you were adding a stroke, because the golf ball would hit the 10th green, and one of these little groundhogs would run out, grab the ball, and take it in the hole. After 5 years, the golf club finally cleared out that hole and pulled out in excess of 6,000 golf balls. Okay. Thank you so much for that, Philip. I appreciate that. And the answer to your question, with that in mind, with that in mind, it's very likely they were taught that he was talking about the pineal gland. Okay, because what it says, for those of you that aren't in the chat room, is the light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. Okay, ultimately, be true to yourself first. The 3 laws I follow, and they're the only 3 I follow, are be true to yourself first. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Energy out, energy in. This is why I don't mind questions from any walk of life. Okay, and I will just simply go, this is the answer as I see it. Okay. The fact of the matter is that we've got to remember that being taught, the one mistake that many religions have taught, is they have focused on fearing everything. And we've got to bring that to a hold. That's got to be brought to a stop. Now, I'm not telling you don't go to church. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you wholeheartedly. Pick a church, pick a temple, pick a coven, pick a support group. It doesn't matter. Find a group of people that will assist you in feeling better about yourself, will help you realize and accept that you have value. Okay. And this is the one thing that was really hard for me to get sorted out was this funny little message here. Okay. That little message there. This I did with a magnifying lens. Okay. And just the sunlight. But I am worth it. It's the most powerful combination of 4 words in any language I've come across, where it comes to rebuilding self-esteem, self-worth, self-motivation. You get the idea. The funny part about it there, Joe, is there is nobody alive. There never has been anybody alive that was perfect. The question is not, are you perfect? The question is, are you striving? And I know in your case, you very definitely are. Angels of Life, how you doing? I do have some good news, sort of. I mean, you are right. You're coming in very late. The real question about about following any religion is, are you treating all people, whether they're of your religion or not? And in your case, Joe, I know you do this. Okay. You treat everybody the same way. That is what is called aiming. You're not perfect, no, but you are striving to be better. And that's all you ever do. That's all anybody ever does. Angels are life. Okay. Just I'm going to let you guys know, because while we're approaching the 2-hour mark here, I will be back on tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. PST. Okay. Because I've got to get into a stable routine. Dave, you guys have been asking for it. Dave's been pushing me since I started going, to pick some time when I can come on. Now, the reality is, because I work from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. Pacific time, okay, I don't have time during the week to be able to just say, absolutely, this is when I'll be here. Yeah, and there's, again, the real factor there is when people are choosing that line of work, as long as they are promoting the whole idea of being, treating everybody equally. I mean, Christ said it really nicely when he said, love thy neighbor as I love thee. Okay. Ultimately, what he meant and what he was getting at is treat the people around you the way you desire to be treated. If I can get that message, and if you will be kind enough to share that message with other people, okay. Oh, just a curiosity thing. I don't know if I can give you the answer at this point. I know where to find it. By God, going to the other side of it. I am curious because, what I'm looking for here, just going to open another tab, which is not necessarily a good idea, but we'll see. If I go I'm just opening another tab to open YouTube up here so I can actually give the right information. Okay, and where are we here? We go tickety-boo into my channel. And I am sitting currently. I'm quite happy with this. I'm sitting right now at 326 subscribers. From my standpoint, that's absolutely amazing. But thank you so much for being part of that. And we are hitting the 2-hour mark. So I am going to bring this to a close, but thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate the questions. And I will be back tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. PST. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's sakes, stay positive.